Hi, and welcome to Stamp with Ginny. Today I'm going to share with you how I made these painted autumn post-it note holders. They hold 3 of these cute little 1 3/8 by 1 7/8 inch post-it note pads, and they make a wonderful gift. So let me set this aside and I'll show you how I got started. The first thing you're going to need is a piece of garden green cardstock. I happen to be using one that's measured 9 1/8 by 7 1/8, and I'm going to set that here on my board. You're going to score along the long side at the 1 1/4 inch, 2 1/2 inch, 4 1/8 inch, 5 3/8 inch, and 6 5/8 inch. And then you're going to turn it to the short side, and you're going to score at the 1 1/4 inch mark, the 2 1/2 inch mark, the 4 5/8 inch mark, and the 5 7/8 inch mark. And then you can set your board aside. Now you're going to take your paper snips and you're going to start by removing these first corners. I'm going to take the side that has the long portion, and I'm going to take my paper snips and I'm going to cut all the way up to the second score line. And then I am going to cut on the second score line to remove that corner. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. At this point I want to remove this corner here, so I'm going to cut along that short little area to the first score line and then cut out the 2 squares. Now that I've got those 2 sides removed, I can cut on this first score line and remove this small square on each side. And I want to do that same thing by removing this square on each side on the long flap here. Okay, now that I've got my flaps cut off, I am ready to kind of work these side flaps and trim them a bit so that they're easier to fold. So I'm cutting on the score line and I'm taking a wedge of cardstock out with my paper snips on each side of this longer flap. So cutting on the score line and taking a wedge of cardstock out. And as you see, that kind of tapers your piece so that it's going to be a little easier to fold. You also, if you want to make sure that you've got a good fold, make sure that when you've cut on the score lines, you haven't left any of that score line showing. It'll make it a smoother fold when you're putting your box together so that it's not quite so tight. Okay, I've got my tabs cut now and I'm ready to start assembling. So I'm going to take my bone folder and score on all of these score lines. Now that I've folded all my score lines with my bone folder so they're nice and crisp, I'm ready to start assembling. I'm going to take my multi-purpose adhesive. You can use the adhesive of your choice, and I am going to add a little bit of adhesive here onto the sides and fold that box in and those flaps in and line them up. And as you can see, it dries fairly quickly so that you can move on. I'm going to do that same thing on the other side. I'm going to add adhesive to each one of these outside flaps and fold in that box side, lining up the outside edges so they're nice and straight. And that's the nice thing about the liquid adhesive. You've got some time to work with it and there's some wiggle room. Okay, now that I've got my sides folded in, I'm ready to fold down my box side. So I'm going to do this 2 sides first and then the front. And at this point I'm going to add a little adhesive to this top flap and I'm going to fold it into the box on that upper score line. And use my bone folder to kind of straighten everything out and make sure things are nice and adhered tight. Okay, and now I'm ready to decorate my box. I'm going to take 2 pieces of designer series paper that measure 2 by 1 1/8 inches, 1 piece that measures 1 1/2 by 1/8, and then 2 pieces that measure 2 by 2 3/8. And I'm going to flip these over so I've got the right side to add adhesive on and decorate the box. I'm adding adhesive to all my pieces here to make it a little quicker and easier. This longer piece goes on the front, and I've left just a little bit of that garden green cardstock showing to make it pretty. And the smaller pieces go on either side. So there's those go. And then these longer pieces that I've cut, one goes inside the box and one goes on the back side of the box, just lining them up. So let me tuck that in here and line it up. I got a little bit of multi-purpose adhesive on my finger, so it's making the DSP stick, but no problem. I'd prefer it stick to the cardstock rather than me. There we go. So now that I've got the designer series paper on, I'm ready for my sentiment from the Flourishing Phrases stamp set, and I'm going to add a little adhesive to the back of that and add it to my Early Espresso scallop circle that I used the layering ovals framelits dies to create, and then the little adhesive on the back. And I'm doing this flat because I want to make sure those post-it notes aren't hindered by anything as they come in and out of the box. Add your post-it note to it and you're ready to go. So let me show you the original again here. If you'd like any of these products, feel free to stop by my online store. It's open 24/7 and you can get there from my blog, stampwithjinny.com. Thanks for joining me.